Hi, welcome back. In the Prokofiev Sixth Sonata, I've decided to start with the first movement, the second main theme, poco più mosso, because I haven't done it in a while. It is not particularly technically challenging, but I need exposure to it. I want to know how it feels in context. I want to be able to get to it with a strong sense of identification. And it's very important not to underestimate really knowing those things that would seem to be simple but might have a subtlety or a significance. In this case, this theme appears in so many different guises during this movement and later on that it's really important for me to develop a strong affinity for it. So I'm going to start at 37, which is just a couple of transition measures before this theme starts. So. Let's see. Just looking for innocuous fingering or an easy fingering, excuse me. And I'm responding to these offbeats. They are so sour. Gradually clarify to something that would be, under certain circumstances, a G7, but it's got the A out, so it stays uneasy. Out of that comes. Yes, I chose a fingering that I forgot, even though I wrote it. And then this reaches down to G, but it doesn't. That's the whole point. A again, it's A twice, once with the G played in the left, then ostensibly with the G played in the right. My fingering was a little weird and arbitrary. I have put in a finger substitution here. B is the bass. For 3 measures, then a measure of bass rest, then back to the beat. Oops. 1, 2, 3. sonority. No matter what I do, I'm getting the wrong sonority in here. Tough luck for me. The only other choices. Which has a certain deliciousness to it. You know, the piles of thirds go well together. But worth a review, I remember. It's because it's the page turn, I'm to my advantage to play it one hand at a time. My left hand is not doing lots, hopefully, and I can do this. A few other ways. I could duplicate the page if I really needed the visual imprint, or I could scan the page and do it electronically on an iPad or something like that, or another portable instrument. So, the chromatic, the thumb chromatic. I need room. That's good. Thumb, down to the 2, down to the E. I noted that the thumb melody holds, and the thumb line holds all the way through. There are no rests. Not that he's written it legato, he's just written it without rest, so. Suckered into playing the grace note in the wrong direction. Still haven't yet landed on a tempo that works for me. This is poco più mosso. The beginning is whoops. In my head, in my recollection, in my body, that feels approximately right. That means I have to keep going back to. And I recall having reminded myself, if I think of this in 2, that might help to make the differentiation. between being naturally tertial and having other elements. So that's a review, but it's kind of arbitrary. In other words, it doesn't penetrate at all. It's not that it's not tuneful, it's not that it doesn't sound familiar, it's that I don't comprehend what I'm doing. So that's where the riff, getting back to what I was doing and trying to recall it, it's also a recognition that having not practiced this in a while, some of that reinforcement and that understanding is lost. I'm going to compare okay, I did that to make sure that the parallelism was exact, it seems to me. A phrase in my head. In 64, I'm playing the upper notes with my fifth finger while having my E held by the thumb. Now I could find a fancy way of using a sosnudo pedal in between left-hand notes. But rather what I did is I let go. And I called it durational forgiveness. Maybe it's a little like getting time out for good behavior or time off for good behavior. So this should be, I could do that I suppose, but it's not worth it. And maybe up there, I'll grab it with my damper pedal, haven't decided. So one of the reasons, now I remember, see it snaps back. The little mnemonics I used, the E flat arpeggio, the augmented, the F sharp with the B added, and more F sharp. Chromatic at the bottom. Playable by feel as well, which is always a good sign that my body is able to embrace it. Okay, how I executed it at that time is I looked at the right hand part and I executed the left hand entirely by feel. It wasn't perfect. Certainly the most challenging thing, and it's not that challenging, is getting to the B here. This is a white note to white note. So I'm thinking the choreography, if I find the right inclination of the hand for there and for there, I can link them together. And link almost. Reminds me tempo. You tend to twist and turn. In this case, it's a comfortable twisting and turning. And it's not even that I'm looking for super legato. I'm just looking for a sense of belonging between these keys and this, so that the delivery to the thumb is smooth. Yes. What I am doing in 64, I am relying just a little bit on the damper pedal, which of course holds notes other than the E that's asked to be held. But and the other detail I hadn't noticed, which is kind of silly because I should have, is that the E is reiterated. So I can always hold it in the left hand. And since I'm not going to be hitting it strongly anyway, it will act to sustain that. So what I had asked myself to do to let go was unconsciously a very wise decision. Lack of parallelism. First the right hand here stalls out and starts playing repeated notes. Next it'll be the left hand's turn. And the fingering makes all the difference. 1, 3, 2, 4. It reminds my right hand what pathway to take. Just as the left hand has a natural connected pathway where there's a unique finger on every key. The third finger on E here on 69. I never finish my sentence. Having a unique set of fingers to pair these repeated note groups. So it gets to 5, 1, 3, 2, 4. Third. Rather than 5, 4, 2. I went down 2, 5, but I'm coming up 5, 4, 3. So. What I see and what I'm doing are two different things. That I'm playing the grace notes in the left hand. This section feels sort of as small and self-contained as the beginning one does. The larger section by far, in my estimation, is what ensues, the whole developmental process that occupies the major portion of the movement, and then the really truncated recapitulation. That's assuming we're using the standard analysis terms for a sonata, and I see no reason not to. There's just so much that's going to happen now that doesn't smack of, here's a theme, we're going to sing it through, maybe move away and come back to it, but rather that the motivic and thematic elements start to combine and recombine in a variety of ways that make it mentally more challenging, obviously. Physically more challenging because there's so much contrapuntal goings on. But I want to have a strong sense of this B theme, of how it develops in time. For example, the fact that it starts off as a single line double, and then what he does to it, how he displaces it, how he doubles it up, how the hands become more and less independent of one another, etc. But I'm reaching the end of the section, and I just wanted to take a snapshot. Now go back. Let's see. We have this ostinato section. Second stagger, this time with the right hand being the purest, playing exactly what the left hand did a moment ago, and the left hand gets to change. First time when the left hand led, there was a mezzo piano crescendo to mezzo forte. This time it's from piano crescendo to forte. So it's more extreme in this version. I've gone 5-2-1 in measure 73 in the left hand to get myself ready. Now again, to remind myself of that fingering, I didn't look at the left hand. Rather than staring at the left hand, I wanted to see if I know it well, or if I have a strong enough sense of how it works that it can be a supportive part, because it's not the lead voice. The right hand is one, and that's me yelling at my right hand. Very little am I adding instructions to the left hand. Why? Because I've built a big enough chunk. Not today, I don't think. I think it's stuck somewhere. I didn't know it right off the bat. I have a 5 here. This is a rather... I don't have a full sense of... If I take the time, as you can see, I can resurrect it. I need to, but maybe I will be looking at a part of it. I need 2 there. 2. That little bit of advice makes a lot of difference. 2. Right. 2. Tell myself and I went to 3. Hilarious. Don't you think that practice humor is some of the weirdest humor, because you play tricks on yourself. You discover things that are funny to you just then and there. You may end up sharing them, but you may not. But I think there's something enlivening and involving, even about recognizing your foibles as you go along and saying, aha, caught you. And then, aha, that worked, or whatever. It's funny. It's fun. Even when it's not fun, one hopes, I hope, for your sake and for my sake, that the times where we really stub our toes and consistently do the same things poorly or badly or with frustration, that there are means of learning how to do it better the next time. So getting up there. 5. I rush now. False bravado. Deadly in practicing. Left-hand eighth note in 75. You have to, because you're going to play that A right away. So if I don't think about it, okay, interestingly enough, it's hard for me to tell if these supportive chords have accents to it. All the quarter note beats and half beats. 4/4. All of the quarter note beats have accents written. And really, if I'm to look at the alignment, it looks as if that's where all the accents are, except for the fact that Prokofiev also wrote in 77 an obvious accent isolated in the bass. At least this edition did. I used that qualifier. He doesn't put the same accent on the third measure of this section, on 79. So it's quite possible. We've arrived at fortissimo. That he's showing a hierarchy. That obviously the secondary notes, the ones that go to the accents, they're written as eighth notes, and they have no accents, and they're offbeats. There's an obvious hierarchy in the right-hand part. I think it won't matter that much. It's fortissimo. The left-hand notes are going to decay anyway. And I rather like the stridency up there. Funny sopra sotto sopra sotto. I did not do what I wrote. I wrote it so I wouldn't forget it, but also so I wouldn't ignore it. It just goes to show, had I not written it, I for sure would have ignored it. But this was past me saying, hey, pay attention. So, diminished, minor, diminished, minor. And not only that, but it's the weird sensations. Scrunched, modestly opened up, tilted, the best of the bunch. Yeah, the last one at least is the most comfortable. It's written in 3/2. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. Yes, I fault Prokofiev for this, or the typesetter, the F sharp with the right hand in 85 really looks as if it just follows the D. It doesn't. It's 1.5 quarter notes away. That's not fair. For those of you who are teachers, how many of your students, unless they're really, really eagle-eyed, will avoid getting suckered into that? I got suckered into it. I've been at this a long time. So it's so easy to get visually disoriented and to recognize that the score can be wickedly misleading. I have an image that there's the score and then there's an alternate universe behind the score that tells you how you have to feel and hear and do things that are not exactly the equivalent to what's on the score. There's an interpretive aspect. There's a translation that goes into it that creates that alternate universe. And that has to be much more crystal clear in terms of intentions and gestures and connections than the score often is. The score is the starting point. And some composers take their responsibility for clarity, and their publishers as well, for making sure they reach out to you and communicate as clearly as is possible what the end result could be, not should be, but what it could be. And in little cases like this, often it's just disorienting and you have to take responsibility. So I wrote little eyeglasses as a reminder. So. Once I have that rhythm in my ear, then I don't have to read it. I was expecting slurs, no slurs. Finger to get up here. Four. Land on D. Four. Let's see. No, these are not broken. It's broken later. So if I just think they alternate position. For me, this alternation is not a big deal. I could go out of my way. No, I couldn't. No sense fighting. I've already struggled my way through this, and I came up with a solution. So I'm not going to doubt myself right now, because it works just fine. Weird? Sure. But kind of fun, actually. One black note in the right hand, but it's all white notes after. The fact that the right and the left hand both have long notes written. The composite rhythm, or what I was taught, the macro rhythm, is much more jagged. I'm going to review. Review is good. Left hand. Let go. Don't forget to let go in a measure, yes. Almost. I'll come back and repair. Too much talking. Okay, I'll repair it now. I should point out that this is a mark of faulty practicing is if you run through stuff too much. In other words, if you insist that you need a run through before you're ready for a run through, all it does is remind you what you don't know. Some of the time you need to do that just to get used to it, but this is far too early for me to insist that I get from beginning to end if I'm thinking about all the things I ought to be doing. So in this case, it's a trade-off, admittedly. It was a reminder that during my previous investigation a few moments ago, this offbeat version of the theme is something I barely touched on. I didn't think about it, didn't penetrate my consciousness, even though I was busily working on the sensation in the left hand. You know, I remember all that, but I don't remember this, including the finger substitution. I know the melody is there. It's nice that I know the rhythm of it because I'm not having to worry about it while playing it with the left hand. That's that famous issue here. I've got a major third here. Maybe I'll just look. Look. That certainly makes it easier. And ultimately, having looked a while, I believe it'll reinforce a smoother choreography. Look. I stopped looking in the wrong place. It's still a little hiccupy in those transitions. That does it. Missing that one. Okay, that time I just committed to playing it from memory, so, or without looking at the score, let me call it that way. That does it. Very often that's all the difference is if you have the visual input, or at least the clarity, even if it's your inner vision, That's what makes the difference. The absolute clarity that you know what you're doing, and you know that you're going either for the right look or the right sensation or the right sound. So you're guided by a sense of purposefulness. And simplicity, I should stress. Excuse me. Yes, he has. So, but I'm taking the greatest. No, here. So. I should write down that my right hand is going to play this with the thumb. It gets the octave ready much more easily. So I'm on 4, 3, 2, 1. Then I move my thumb over. Gesture. That's it. So my left hand is not, I don't know my left hand. The same way I know my right hand. I know enough to yell at myself to play second finger on E. Second. That's it. Now again, using visual input, especially when you have slightly awkward or slightly unpredictable gestures, is very useful. What I don't want to do is impose a sense of, ooh, play it from memory. Rather, I want to impose a sense of, how can I optimize and simplify what I'm doing? If that means looking at my hands, where they're placed, as I just did there. I didn't think, oh, I'll play it from memory. I thought, what can I do to make it easier? And that, as far as I'm concerned, is the only reason pianists should be memorizing, is because it makes their playing more compelling. Because it makes them more interactive with the music that they've learned. It makes it possible to internalize it more. In conservatories, it appears that the reason we memorize things is because the juries demand it or the competitions demand it. But if it's not for musical reasons, it's probably nonsensical. It's just that when you're practicing like this, you realize to what extent, especially music like this, benefits from knowing it really well and internalizing it. As you see, okay. Expected somehow a half step. I didn't get it, it's not written. The black note, the third of 4 in the left, the black note, the first of 4 in the right. So. got it, and then I was telling myself, I know this finger is. Made me nervous, I think. 1, 4. I could go on here, but actually I'm going to go back because I know in the first theme it still bugs me a little bit. You know what? I'm going to go right for that. That's measure 11 in the first theme. First page in this Boosey and Hawkes edition. Measure 12 actually. No pedal, there's no sostenuto. Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic that, even though I think I haven't played it in 48 hours or something like that, that I recall what I recalled. That I know that the shape of it, or the intention and the strategy is coming back to me. That's a good sign when you're practicing and trying to balance learning a bunch of things at the same time. I will pretty soon go into learning or relearning some old solo repertoire and doing some violin piano duo repertoire. So I know there will be lots of moments where I will be having to make connections with past days' work, sometimes a number of days ago, and trying to make sure that I leave a strong enough impression. So in this case, I left not a pure impression that I knew exactly what to do, but the moment I laid my fingers on the piano and the moment I started to think about what I was doing, I recalled that there's a relative freshness to it, and that, at the very least, is something you always want to have if you can. So, 1/9, whoops, that's a 10th. Oh, and I was using the sostenuto pedal twice. So this is a perfect example of something that definitely benefits from vision, which means it benefits from knowing it, from internalizing it. So let's see. Mixing two phrases up, or two places up. And then those two left-hand octaves in a row, which is not the usual, not the norm. Here they come. Here they come. That second phrase. Blanking, so it's this. Okay, didn't blank for long. I'm thinking, and this will be for later, I'm not tossing my arm with enough alacrity to make these really speak. And I want all of that A motive to speak really determinedly and violently. It's easy to get cushy, especially when it's comfortable. And I don't want to be comfortable. I don't want anger to sound comfortable, for example. Do I have anger? I didn't. Do I need to look? No. If I look, I should look early, so then I'm available to look at my right hand. I can look then. That becomes part of my choreography. So I sneak a peek at my left hand thumb note. I may not need it, but the fact is, very often, from a state of mind point of view, you want to be able to know that you can rely on something so you don't have to rely on it, if you know what I mean. You want to know that it's there, that you have a safety net so you can fall into it. Doesn't mean you're going to fall into it. It means that you are less fearful because you know you have a safety net. So, look at my thumb. So, at that time I was very casual. I kind of glanced in the general area of the thumb, and somehow my body found that aid. So, there you go. Let me go back. Whoops. Yeah, I know. I missed one placement. It's going so well that I frazzled myself. So. Yeah, the start of the second phrase, I don't know why. Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why I felt funny. What matters is that I didn't feel good. So I have to practice replacing my hand there. I have to practice that transition. It's a perfect example of why I'm so fond of practicing transitions, because we often set ourselves up to have this fait accompli, a feeling that I got to the end of this phrase, good for me, and then suddenly you have to start all over again. You don't know how to make the connection because physically or mentally you haven't prepared yourself. So, bad mistake. Here. Whoops. Except it should be an A. Wherewithal to tell my right hand where to toss. So, hey. Right. So. Still happens, you'll see. Look. Hey. Okay, now that's at the point where I can start physically refining it. You know, there are subtleties of gesture and of assurance that are not there. Right now it's not just on the tip of my tongue, it's getting more available, but it's not reached the point where it's a friend. but it's reached the point where it's a pretty good speaking acquaintance. So I'm going to try to work my way up to it by starting at the beginning. Sure it feels right, and shift to the left hand fourth finger. And the difference here starts on F sharp. Practice that transition. Difference when it's familiar to take the turn. Imagine you're on a road, on a street, on a city street, and you turn, and you know that when you turn, there will be that familiar store or home or something else, as opposed to turning a city street in an unfamiliar area, and you have no idea what you'll confront, whether there'll be a superhighway there, or something falling down, or a hole in the sidewalk. So there's an assurance when you can make the turn and expect to see something, and expect that there will be continuity in your gait, for example. And that's what happens here, that if I know in advance that this is going to happen, I feel good about it. And if I'm not quite sure, I feel at best iffy. And I think iffy is worse than feeling as if you don't know it all. If you don't know it all, you can learn it. If you think you sort of know it, and you're doubtful or you're hopeful that you can be lucky, that's always for me, the worst kind of case, that you want to be able to address the issue of learning stuff that you don't know to the point where it becomes familiar and trustworthy. So, let's see. What I said is not what I did. C natural. C natural. And what I didn't have was the immediate message to go up to that C major minor. So you notice. There it is. Let's get to the third one. The second one. Okay, I've got to remember it's as it was at the beginning. Okay, so that whole first section starts to have an identity. The A theme, A motive is gone now. We have this transitional material which will bind us to the next theme. So I'm going to spend a little time just working on some of that, because then I'll feel good. I'll feel that isolated chunks that I was working on are starting to feel a sense of relationship, which is just what I did before when I bound the jumpy around contrapuntal section with the first A section. So here we are at measure 24 with a little bit left over. Very easily, that sounds extraordinarily ginger. It sounds too much as if I'm lifting too much information from the score, which is an indication that much of it is not well stuck. What is fairly well stuck is these things. Those have a continuity to them, a simplicity of design. Even I'm remembering when in fragments, the third one, that's got that interesting way in which the left hand continues and dovetails with the restart on the B flat chord. So I don't even know that I was aware of the way it did that before, but I am, because I wasn't able to get it a moment ago. It's very handy that I noticed it, so I'm circling it. Yes. No, I don't know if, yeah, my right hand, just as it did before, stays stationary. So that was, this is relatively easy to remember, hands alone, but it's terribly distracting in the score because of the alternating slurs and the special fingering on fourth finger that I chose for the D flat at the bottom of 30. So this is not going to stay in readable form. It's got to become more internalized. Here's a maybe, a for sure, a 2-1 instead of a 1-2 in the second chord of 32, for me. And then the 33 is the, from a learning perspective, the most challenging passage in this fragment, because the chords move all over the place, their groupings change. It's not that they're not somewhat predictable, it's that they're not totally predictable. The patterns become obvious the more I become familiar with them, but certainly they're not simple repetitions. They're very... First of all, I need to negotiate that. So, the middle chords are all steps. One tilted, one white note, one tilted, then a third, then a reversal. There's no octave in this one. And the third one is back to all white notes. All white notes, mostly black notes, all white to C major. Good. These are all half steps. I must admit, I'm a huge fan of those alternating slurs. They drive you crazy when you first try to learn them, but if you do some microcosmos of Bartók, for example, he stresses that kind of contrapuntal capability early on. So I shouldn't be leaping towards this because this is a beginning, a new beginning. So the lines I've written should be much clearer to indicate a restart. Again, the left hand acts as if it hasn't restarted. It's left where it would have been, but then it leaps up here. It's the right hand that starts it, just as a phrase before. I mentioned the continuation of the left hand, whereas the right hand has established a new phrase. Same thing's happening here. So, now here's a chord I can't read and I don't know why. I mean, I can carefully read it. I have a couple of sharps, and my tendency was to sharpen the B, the sort of thing that I have to stare at long and hard and recognize that the placement of the accidental on the page seems a little bit off, a little bit arbitrary, so I'm not able to grab meaning right away, but that looks like B major on top. B rather than B sharp, D sharp rather than D natural. If it were D natural, that would have been odd. So I'm going to use logic as well as eyes. Okay, so then I have two parallel major chords on top. That's good. Actually, I have a C major chord second inversion. So C going to B, going to C. That's good too. I have C staying on C, going to B, going to C. Bunches of reinforcements. Tried to do there was to not look at my right hand part, that is to say. In other words, it's a way of developing an understanding for how it feels without getting that nervous feeling that you get if you say, oh, I've got to try to play this for memory. I didn't try to play it all for memory. I tried to play it not relying on the notes in the same fashion. In fact, when I was talking to you, you'll notice somehow that diffused a sense of, ooh, am I going to get it? That's any trick you can play with yourself, like being goofy, or I recall in graduate school practicing scales in octaves like this, the 24 major and minor set where you do a little turn, and I did it non-stop. Don't do this at home, please. For about 3 hours. It's not that it was physically challenging. I wasn't pushing myself within my limits. It's that any of you who have tried playing contrary motion octaves will discover that the hand placements are always changing. It's so different. You don't get hand positions the way you do in simple note scales. So there's an extraordinary amount of concentration that goes even into playing, say, an A major chord in contrary motion. So I discovered that the thing that suited me best, that diffused my sense of concern and over-concentration, was to sing. I sort of muttered in the key that I was in, and it diffused the feeling that I was worried too much, and I was able to sort of more peripherally notice how I was doing, and it was a good lesson that I've carried with me. So putting a goofy expression on your face, finding a camera, even if it doesn't work, and talking to it, doing other things. Some people read a book, you know. I've heard that people drill things while reading a book, but the point of it is that in certain instances, when you have to lose self-consciousness or not concentrate like crazy, you have to find a way of spreading out the consciousness otherwise. For example, I could look out the window and play a part and see, you know, in this case, these are the chords. I know that. And if I'm going to put them together, okay, a little bit of me got distracted. I wasn't able to fully talk to you. Well, this time I was, because I had glanced at the left hand and reminded myself what's going to happen here. So, in short order, I can take a snapshot. I want to know more and more how long that snapshot can be, so it turns into a, what can I call it, a mental video. In any event, that's very much a part of the practicing, is noting what parts of you you're relying on. Is it your full consciousness? Is it your full vision? Is it some very overt gesture that you either do with consciousness or have learned to do more automatically? And when you have a combination of those events, like when you have these wonderful slurs that are happening on off beats, what exactly do you think about? Anyway, so it's getting better just because I'm listening to myself. I'm listening to what I'm saying. Or better yet, I'm learning it in a way that I can file it away. Okay, so here I am. An obvious, he wrote a pedal mark and lets it dissipate. So I'm going to go with him. I haven't written in sostenuto. It's so high up here that there's not going to be a direct clash. These notes don't even have dampers anyway, so they're going to decay quickly. That's about as arbitrary as it gets. I mean, that just, which is to say, inside here I felt no meaningfulness to my choice. I just felt I was reading with my eyes wide open. So here to there, 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 here to there. Those are my groupings. Is that the same? No. If I'm looking at, as often I would when I sing in choir, for example, it's the notes that are close together that are easiest to get. They're easiest to produce. They're easiest to hear. So, in a chord movement like this, there are three voices moving the three voices, but the top one moves up a half step. The bottom one moves down a third. The middle one moves down a third. So the one I should be guided by is the top one. Not because it's the top one or because I might hear it better, because that's not necessarily the case. But it nestles into place. It's right under my hand, and it's a step up. Same thing for the next one. Now, back to the same note, so that's a help, that the second octave is like the first octave. There is an intervening A minor 7th chord, or I rather assume it's. No, there was a C sharp a moment ago, so it's an A 7th chord. None of these really sound that way anyway, right? So, is it to my advantage? It helps me to know that this is an A 7th chord of some sort, but it also helps me to note here that it's one step down. The thumb line, if I trace that one step down, one white note down, I find my new chord. So, to here, go up a 7, go up a second. This is true, actually, of the second pairing. The thumb goes down 1. So the upper line goes up 1, the thumb goes down 1, the upper line goes up 1, the thumb goes down 1. How about that? Okay, some of you are saying, I knew that, why didn't he do it before? So, later on there is no, well maybe there is. In this case the bottom note and the top note are the same. So here, think down, think down, up and down. And then so the B of the first chord is the bottom note, becomes the top note of the next chord, repeats itself. From the bottom note. I'm just thinking of the proximity. And again, G goes to F. Am I going to think of all those things? I don't know, but as I teach them to myself, the proximity makes a huge difference. Here, it's quite possible that I'm just going to pick up my hand and move it over here. But the sense of being in a familiar place, like I was just here, and I'm going to be here. Whether I know that consciously, my body knows it, and some combination thereof builds assurance. These are easy. I have no choice, I think. I'm going 1, 4, 3, 1, 2, 5. 1, 4, 5, 2, 3. So 5, 3, 2. Going to 3, 2, 1. Thinking more of my left hand for a while. So I'm going to go with the left hand groupings. See if my right hand is well enough learned that it can support the left rather than the other way around. Because there are fewer and longer and more linear groups in the left hand, which should be to my advantage. Well, it wasn't perfect, but it really was helpful. And I'm trying not to stare at my right hand. I'm checking it once in a while. By that I mean my right hand part in the score. Off pedal. Oh no, not necessarily. He's written an indeterminate pedal. And if you were to just replay when I first came to this today, you would find that I pretty quickly have developed a sense of assurance that was in no way there a few moments ago, and it's all because of the patterning. Well, this is interesting. These seconds at the bottom, here's a second filling in a fifth. Here's a second filling in a fifth. This next one is a fifth with the second extending it. So I've got to make sure that the sensation I have in my hand of these 5-2-1s, these are compressed. This one is bigger. So if I'm ready for that sensation, I'll be more accurate. I'll be accurate, let me put it this way. Should be doing. I have been leading with thinking about it, but I haven't been voicing it in a fashion that shows it's the lead voice. Let me put it this way. They're quarter notes, and as I've said, it's much more linearly distinguished. The right hand is more repetitive and more supportive. This is where we came in.